right, 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 10. Wife, if you could read that for us, that'd be great. Nice and loud.
For the love of money is the root of all evil, which while some coveted after, they have erred from the faith, and pierced themselves through with many sorrows.
All right, you read that too fast, so do that again.
For the love of money is the root of all evil, which while some coveted after, they have erred from the faith, and pierced themselves through with many sorrows.
All right, very good. So 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 10. Okay, so it talks about, we're familiar with this verse, I'm sure, and the concept of the love of money being the root of all evil. But there's more to that verse as well, where it talks about the coveting and erring from the faith. Okay, so there's the coveting and erring from the faith. And what happens when that occurs, right? And we get the piercing themselves through with many sorrows, right? So it kind of devolves down into this sorrows that they ended up doing to themselves, okay? So hopefully we're all familiar with that verse. And what's interesting is that as we're going through Genesis 27, 28, 29, 30, etc. there, we can turn to there, Genesis 28. All right, last week we had in Genesis 27, 26, 27, we covered where Jacob's deception of Isaac was used to gain the blessing that Isaac was going to give to Esau, right? We talked about that. We have also seen where Jacob purchased the birthright from Esau, okay? And Esau's despising of his birthright, okay? And what's involved then with our birthright and blessing is what? What's involved with our birthright and blessing? What's involved with those things? Who knows? Nobody knows. Ian, you know.
I would assume what's involved with the birthright anyways is just, the order in which you're born, so you have more responsibility.
Okay, responsibility with responsibility is what? Yeah, you could say that, right? Responsibility, power, and what else? Obligation. That's a fancy word for responsibility, right? What else? What else is there? What comes with responsibility and what comes with power? Huh? Authority. Sure, that's a fancy word for our power, right? What else? What comes with those things? Privilege. What comes with privilege? Say it again. Money. Right? Okay, so if we think about this a little bit, we have this background of 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 10, tinging this whole story. Okay? And that's kind of what I want to bring out today as we progress from the stealing of the blessing, the purchasing, some could say the sneaky purchasing of the birthright, right? The desire for the power, the desire for the responsibility, but behind that is also money, okay? And then these things are being coveted after. Because why did Esau cry? Why did Esau pitch such a big fit once he saw that, my brother again, he got me? Right? Why? What did he miss out on? What was involved in that blessing? He lost the wealth, right? Let's go back. Where is our blessing? Right? In 27. Chapter 27, verse 28. Therefore God give thee of the dew of heaven and the fatness of the earth, and plenty of corn and wine. Let people serve thee, and nations bow down to thee. Be Lord over thy brethren, and let thy mother's sons bow down to thee. Cursed be everyone that curseth thee, and blessed be he that blesseth thee. Right? So what was gained, or what was to be gained, as part of that blessing? Lots of material wealth. Right? So he knew what he missed out on. Okay? So this concept of 1 Timothy chapter 6, right, tinges our whole relationship with Jacob and Esau and Isaac and this whole thing. And hopefully we'll get more into that here. So we left off then in Genesis 27, 42 through 46, right, where Esau was seeking to kill Jacob. Why was Esau seeking to kill Jacob? So he could get the blessing. Because, right, if the one who has the birthright and the one who has the blessing is now dead, to whom does it fall? Next in line, right? Okay. So again, this killing, why does he want to, right? So this first Timothy, again, concept changes even his reactions and why he's doing what he's doing. Okay? Genesis chapter 28, verses 1 through 5. All right, so this is where we pick up new for this week. And Isaac called Jacob and blessed him, and charged him, and said unto him, Thou shalt not take a wife of the daughters of Canaan. Arise, go to Padanaram, to the house of Bethuel, thy mother's father, and take thee a wife from thence of the daughters of Laban, thy mother's brother. And God Almighty bless thee, and make thee fruitful, and multiply thee, that thou mayest be a multitude of people, and give thee the blessing of Abraham, to thee and to thy seed with thee, that thou mayest inherit the land wherein thou art a stranger, which God gave unto Abraham. And Isaac sent away Jacob, and he went to Padanaram unto Laban, son of Bethuel the Syrian, the brother of Rebekah, Jacob and Esau's mother. Okay, so what do we have happening here? Peter.
The father, Isaac, is going to send him away, but also what hit me as you're reading through it is Isaac, you would think, okay, he stole the blessing, why can't I just verse it with his brother? But somehow he acknowledges that must have been God's sovereign will, because now he gives the blessing of Abraham upon him.
You're right. In 3 and 4, 4, Abraham is again blessing Jacob, even though he knows what just happened and how it came about, right? So which then goes back to last week, did Isaac know that Jacob was supposed to be the one to get the blessing in the first place, and he tried to circumvent it because he loved Esau? Or did he not realize, and now he's getting it, it's like, wow, God really has shown his hand in these events, and, well, I might as well roll with it because otherwise I'm going to be in trouble, right? So there's God's blessing, again, upon Jacob. And what's interesting then, too, is that Isaac realizes the transition of the promise. Right? We came from Abraham. That promise was given to Isaac. Now, who is that promise explicitly given to?
He also must realize that even though he's sending him out of the country to get a wife, God will obviously bring him back, because this is the country that God promised.
Sure, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, or about how Jacob left the country and how that's different than what Abraham did with Isaac. Right? So Abraham to Isaac, Isaac now explicitly passing on the promise with God's blessing to Jacob. All right? And going and taking a wife of Laban, so the wives of the country, they're no good for you, right? What's interesting then in verse 4 is the words that the Bible uses, right? How does verse 4 start off? It's not hard. They're printed right there. How does the verse 4 start off?
And give thee the blessing of Abraham.
Okay, and give thee. What does that mean to you, Evan?
That there's more.
That there's more? What does that mean?
There's not just one blessing, there's another. And give thee the blessing of Abraham.
Okay. Peter, what does that mean?
I look at it as all a gift. And back previous in the chapter, when you were talking about it, and you went back to 1 Timothy 6, above that was God who gave it all.
Sure, God giving it all.
And the problem is that people stop at the money,
Yeah,
they don't get back to the God who gives it all.
that's true. People don't go back to the God who gives it all. What's interesting about the word give? He didn't earn it, right? So what does that mean it's not past tense? Well, no. The blessing of Abraham has not been passed to Jacob yet, right? But Isaac recognizes the fact that it will be. Like Valerie points out, it's not past tense. He didn't give it, God hasn't given it to Jacob yet. He's going to, but he hasn't done it yet. Okay? And we'll see that in a little bit. Chapter 28, verses 6 through 9. Right? Here we have Esau. Esau saw that Isaac had blessed Jacob and sent him away to Padanaram to take him a wife from thence, and that he was blessed, and he gave him a charge saying, don't take a wife of the daughters of Canaan, right? And Esau saw that. And then in 9, he takes a wife of the daughter of Ishmael. So if you're Esau, what's going through your mind? Right? Because who had Esau married previously? Women of the land. Women of the land that were defined as a grief of mind to Isaac and Rebekah. Right? So what's Esau trying to do with this marriage? Right? Get back into favor with his dad again. Or even his mom again. Right? By marrying somebody within the family. So if they sent Jacob off over there, well, I got to go to Ishmael. But what does that tell you about Esau? Where is his focus? Because what do you know about Ishmael? Or don't we know anything about Ishmael? He's what? He's a wild man. What else? Married an Egyptian, sure. His mom was Egyptian. Who is Ishmael compared to Isaac? Who's Isaac compared to Ishmael?
Maybe his step-uncle or whatever.
True. Remember how we talked about, we have the promise, right? The promise started with Abraham. Who was born next? Ishmael. Did Ishmael get the promise? Why not? Right? He's not Abraham's seed, right? That's not the promised seed. Okay? So Ishmael is then rejected. Okay? So we have the son of the promise, Isaac, and we have the son of rejection, which is Ishmael. Okay? So we got two different paths going here. So then we got Jacob. Isaac is saying, God, give thee the promise of Abraham. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. And we see that happening, right? Because that's how the line goes. Where does Esau go to? To what line does Esau go? To the line of rejection. So even though he's trying to get back into the good graces of his father and mother possibly, right? Where does he go? He's still carnally minded. He's going to the line of rejection and not to the line of promise. Peter.
On the New Testament, I can't remember exactly where off the top of my head, but flesh.
Mm-hmm.
Ishmael was born of the flesh. Isaac was of the spirit, the promise.
Right.
So Esau has always been operating in the flesh. He's still operating in the flesh.
You're right.
Trying to be spiritual, but in a fleshly way.
Right, exactly. So Esau, like we've talked about in the last couple of weeks, his name, his pattern of manner has all been in the flesh. Even Isaac's love for him is strictly because of the flesh, right? So here, what's his name? Esau is trying to be spiritual, but yet he's doing it in the line of rejection, in carnality, in the flesh still, and it's a train wreck still. Randy.
I think I'm paying attention. Is this similar to what happened with Christ when the birthright, as opposed to the spiritual, fulfilling the prophecy and how complicated that was?
And the fact that it was complicated in the line of Christ, yes.
There was one that was birthright and one that was spiritual or something like that. I remember you talking about that.
Yeah, the way the virgin birth and the two lines in the line of Christ had to come into play were both physical, spiritual, and then also there's the legal and physical rights that had to be retained by Christ. So it's not exactly like that, but it is complicated. So that's always fun, right? So trying to gain favor, still carnally minded. Genesis 28 then, as we pick up in 10 and 11, kind of tells us a bit about Esau as a hunter and relationships between those two brothers. At least in my mind it does. Because in 10, Jacob went out from Beersheba and went toward Haran, and he lighted upon a certain place and tarried there all night, because the sun was set, and took of the stones of that place and put them for his pillows and lay down in that place to sleep. And then in verse 12 it starts off, he dreamed, right? So what did Jacob just do? What was Jacob's day just like? What was Jacob's day just like? What happened? Yeah, he got sent on a journey, right? He leaves Beersheba and he's walking, right? He takes his junk and he's walking and he's going to Haran. And Haran is not a day's journey. You've got about 20 days, right? Okay, so what happens? What happens next? Sun starts to set. What does Jacob do? Randy.
Well, as far as Jacob, he must have been really, really tired and fall asleep.
Right, he's really tired. I mean, how many of you take stones for pillows and are able to go to sleep? Right? That is the worst camp out ever. Right? Pillows for stones, pass, thanks. In the wilderness. So now, I don't know about you, but when how many ever gone camping? Oh, a lot of you. Wow, okay, good. How many of you sleep out under the stars? Only a couple. All right, very good. So when you sleep out under the stars, do you hear anything? Cricket? You hope it's crickets, right? When you hear that rustle off in the bushes, what do you think? Raccoon. Right? Right? Something bigger, Tony says. Right? So think about who Jacob is. Is Jacob the hunter? No. Who is he? He's the homeboy. He likes tents, right? He's with his mother. He's in the tents. He likes his security, right? He likes to hear the sound. He likes to sleep in his own bed, right? That's who he is. But now he's off on this journey by himself in the wilderness, sleeping under the stars for the first time. What does that tell you about Esau? And yes, I said Esau on purpose. What does that tell you about Esau? Is Esau who we think he is? Everybody's like, what? What are you talking about Esau? What do you know about Esau? That was Ishmael. He's not quite as wild.
No, but he's a hunter.
He's a hunter, right? He's a hunter. Okay? Valerie.
Found him and tracked him down.
Why didn't he? Why didn't he? Valerie said he could have come and tracked him down. Right? Because think about it. If Esau is that mad and is threatening to kill him, right? If he's that mad and he's threatening to kill Jacob, and you see him walk off into the wilderness, right? And you know there's no city over there. He's got a long trek. What would you do? Peter's snickering. Peter knows.
God in his sovereignty can keep people from having certain thoughts.
Sure, God in his sovereignty does keep people from having thoughts like that, don't they?
Maybe got him off track thinking about getting his own wife.
Oh, sure.
That happened time-wise. Could have been right then, I don't know.
Sent him off on his own little journey to get a wife and leave Jacob alone. All right, very good. I like that. Randy?
Well, to admit my own fallibility, I suppose I'd really know what Esau thought if I read the Bible a little more studiously, like some people do. Have the answer to these questions, which I really don't.
That's fine, man. Don't worry about it. All right, what I also found interesting is in chapter 27, verse 20. And maybe it's just me because I've always thought about that. Like, why didn't Esau go after him, right? And then in 27 verse 20, we see this shot taken by Jacob at Esau. And we don't really realize it at first, but it's there. And Isaac said unto his son, and this is being Jacob, how is it that thou hast found it so quickly, my son? So remember in 27, Isaac sent Esau out to get the venison. Go hunt me some venison, make me my savory meat, and then I'll bless you after that. And then Jacob comes in with the goat that his mom cooked up for him, right? And what does Jacob answer in verse 20? And he said, because the Lord thy God brought it to me. Right? And it sounds kind of spiritual, right? Right? Well, why are you here so quickly? Why are you here so quickly? Oh, well, because the Lord thy God brought it to me. What does that actually say? What is that saying about Esau's skills as a hunter? That God had to bring him the kill. Not that God expertly helped me track this thing, right? Not my own talents. Dad, I'm a hunter. I could do this, right? Not, God supplied, but it's like God brought it to me. I was sitting here, God had it walk right up to me, and then, now I have it. So what does that tell you about Jacob's perception of Esau's hunting skills? He's making fun of Esau. I don't know if you see it here, but as an older brother, that's what I see. I see him making fun of Esau. Well, I'm not that good as a hunter, so God brought it to me clearly, right? And then if you take that in with 28, where Esau does not go and hunt Jacob down in the wilderness, because that's what I would have done. And that probably speaks to my own carnality, but that's what I would have done. I would have at least messed with him. Because you're tired. He doesn't sleep outside. Oh, I'm going to be throwing rocks. I'm going to be making animal noises. I'm going to keep this dude up all night long. And he's going to be a mess. Right? And he won't be able to find me because I'm awesome as a hunter. Right? Because that's the feel that you get. But like Peter said, maybe with the whole taking of Esau's own other wife, God has redirected that focus, right, of the carnal off over there into his own train wreck of goods over there, right? I don't know. I just found that interesting that those types of things take place. Those little details that get put into a story like that we often ignore, just blow over. Randy.
Well, I happened to notice that it was like a line that Jacob told his father about Esau. About the stuff.
Yeah.
And lies are of Satan. So
Who's working?
I don't quote the scripture really definitely, and quote see the Bible, the God behind me when they really the devil.
We often try and hide or justify. We try and justify the things that we do in a spiritual sense, even though we know there was no spiritual reason behind it at all. That's just what we wanted to do. But we like to cover our tracks and hide what we're doing and make it seem spiritual. Way too often, right? Genesis then 28, 12 through 15. We actually then have Jacob being asleep, and this is the dream that he has with the ladder there. Let's see, 12. And behold, a ladder was set up on the earth, and the top of it reached to heaven, and behold, the angels of God ascending and descending on it. And behold, the Lord stood above it and said, I am the Lord God of Abraham thy father, and the God of Isaac. The land whereon thou liest, to thee will I give it, and to thy seed. And thy seed shall be as the dust of the earth, and thou shalt spread abroad to the west, and to the east, and to the north, and to the south. And in thee and in thy seed shall all the families of the earth be blessed. And behold, I am with thee, and will keep thee in all places whither thou goest, and will bring thee again into this land, for I will not leave thee until I have done that which I have spoken to thee of. Okay, so here we have the fulfillment of verse 4, okay, where Isaac is saying to Jacob, and, God give to thee the blessing of Abraham. And in 12 through that section there that we just read, 15, we have the fulfillment of that. God is actually giving him this promise, okay? And we have the whole ladder situation as well. What's interesting with that ladder that's mentioned in verse 12 is that we have a reference to that in John chapter 1. So if you turn to John chapter 1, we'll take a look at that quick. John chapter 1, verses 49 through 51. John chapter 1, verses 49 through 51. Nathanael answered and saith unto him, Rabbi, thou art the Son of God, thou art the King of Israel. Jesus answered and said unto him, Because I said unto thee, I saw thee under the fig tree, believest thou? And thou shalt see greater things than these. And he saith unto him, Verily, verily, I say unto you, hereafter ye shall see heaven open, and the angels of God ascending and descending upon the Son of Man. So verse 51 there, that imagery that's given there is similar to what is seen in Genesis 28, verse 12, and behold, the angels of God ascending and descending upon that ladder there, right? What's interesting then is, who is described in John? Who is Christ talking to? Starts with an N. Nathanael. What do we know about Nathanael? How is Nathanael described? Pure in heart, what does that mean? Okay, there's a specific word we're looking for that starts with a G, Peter. Huh? In him is no guile, right? That's who Christ is talking to in John chapter 1, is Nathanael. In him whom? How does that go? Is no guile, right? How does that compare to Genesis 28 and to who God is talking to there? Yeah, he laughs. Dennis laughs, right? Because what do we know about Jacob? What's his name? Supplanter, deceiver. any guile in the last story we just read? Just a little bit, right? Okay, Randy.
Mind if I digress? When I was a kid about Jacob, we had a song called Jacob's Ladder, and I didn't really know much about Jacob. But one of these days I might sing it in front of the church, but I doubt it. Maybe I will get the courage one day. But Jacob's Ladder, I went to Y camp, and it was about Jacob's Ladder, which is interesting.
Well, hopefully we won't sing that now, though, okay?
No, I won't. I'm not that bad.
All right. Genesis chapter 28. We'll go back to Genesis chapter 28, verses 16 through 22, right? And this is then Jacob waking out of his sleep and saying, surely the Lord is in this place, and I knew it not. Why not? Right? We are pretty spiritually blind. 2 Corinthians chapter 4. 2 Corinthians chapter 4. Verse 4 says, in whom the God of this world hath blinded the minds of them which believe not, lest the light of the glorious gospel of Christ, who is the image of God, should shine unto them. Right? Who is Jacob supposed to be? Right? Abraham, Isaac, and now Jacob. Who is Jacob supposed to be? He's supposed to be that next son of the promise, right? So no spiritual responsibilities at all on him, right? Okay. He is supposed to be that ambassador then for God. But we know then that he is blind, and that after this dream he wakes up and surely I know it not. And then in 17 he goes, and he was afraid and said, how dreadful is this place? This is none other but the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven. And Jacob rose up early in the morning and took the stone that he had put for his pillows and set it up for a pillar and poured oil upon the top of it. And he called the name of that place Bethel, but the name of that city was called Luz at the first. And Jacob vowed a vow, saying, if God will be with me, and will keep me in this way that I go, and will give me bread to eat and raiment to put on, so that I come again to my father's house in peace, then shall the Lord be my God. Why did Jacob make that vow?
More like a bargain or a deal.
Yeah.
Contract with God than a vow.
It does, doesn't it? He's trying to bargain. He's trying to deal. He's trying to manipulate God, right? Which is an interesting thing to do, because what did God just promise him?
It makes no sense. I mean, one's, spiritually, I guess, maybe
Right.
more and more carnal mind. I don't know.
Yeah. And here he is
Shows his unbelief that he's maybe struggling with.
showing his unbelief. Okay, very good. Randy?
Well, as a child, I had a kind of overview of Jacob, Isaac, Abraham, all these great guys, and I never realized how many flaws they had.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's the one interesting, well, that's not the one. It is an interesting thing that the Bible does, right? The Bible does not show all our spiritual heroes in this glowing light that sets them apart from us, right? They are human just like we are. They are flawed just like we are. God used them just like he can use us, right? There's the only special quality that our spiritual giants in the faith have, right? That we think about Paul or David or whatever, right? Samuel, Moses. The only difference between them and us is their willingness to obey. Is the willingness to obey, right? If we were willing to obey the same way they were, God would use us the same way, right? So we have here Jacob. What's interesting? Mark chapter 4. Matthew, Mark. Mark chapter 4. Here we have Jacob vowing a vow. And what is the point of Jacob's vow? What is he asking for? He's asking for physical care, right? If God gives me food, if God gives me raiment, if he brings me back here in peace, then, right? If Mark chapter 4, verses 18 through 19, this is the parable of the sower, right? And he's sowing seeds. And in 18, it's the thorny ground. And these are they which are sown among thorns, such as hear the word, and the cares of this world, and the deceitfulness of riches, and the lust of other things, entering in, choke the word, and becometh unfruitful. Right? What do we see in Jacob's life? We see 1 Timothy chapter 6 tinging this whole story here. Right? Even in Jacob's vow that he's using trying to manipulate God to care for him, even though God just promised what he was going to do, he's asking for these physical things. Right? So Jacob's heart is like this thorny ground where the cares of this world are attempting to choke Jacob out. Right? And why do we make stupid vows like this? Right? Even though God just promised what he was going to do for us, just like he just promised what he was going to do for Jacob, we go, well, God, I mean, if you can come through for me here, that'd be really great. And then I will do, well, that's not the way God works. Yoli.
Just assuming, because this is the very first time that he heard from God, and God actually spoke to him.
Yeah.
It's kind of doubt, or maybe probably hesitant if God will truly do what he says.
So you think he might be trying to use the vow as like a fleece type of thing? Where this is his, Yoli was saying how this is the first time that he himself heard from God directly, or at least he's pretty sure he heard from God directly, and he's trying to prove that out.
And you're right, he's actually focused on physical things.
Yeah, he's very focused on the physical things, right? All right, so very good. Genesis chapter 29 then. This is not Mark. Genesis chapter 29. We see Jacob then coming to the well in Haran, right? And we have a similar situation where he's coming up to the well. This could be the same well that Abraham's servant came to, right? When he was going to pick out Isaac's wife, Rebekah. So they're coming up to the same well. And what happens with Jacob when he gets to this well? What does he see? What does he do? Let's go back then to what Abraham's servant did when he got to this well. What did Abraham's servant do? Abraham's servant prayed. Do we see Jacob doing any of that? No. Do we see Jacob seeking the Lord at all? No. Right? Okay. What's interesting then is the parallel between these two stories, right, is we have Abraham. Who did Abraham send to Haran? Did he send Isaac? He sent his servant. Why? Abraham specifically said, you're not taking my son over there. Where in this case, Jacob himself was sent there. Under the assumption that he was supposed to come back. How long was Jacob supposed to be gone for? A few days. Just go over there for a few days. It'll blow over. I'll send you word again, and then you can come back. Right? But what do we actually see? In chapter 29, verse 14. Yeah, I can't turn my page. 29, verse 14. And Laban said to him, surely thou art my bone and my flesh. And he abode with him the space of a month. Well, now Jacob's there a month. What happens in 29, 15 through 20? Right? Laban asked him, what shall thy wages be? And Jacob goes, her. 7 years. I'll give you 7 years for her. So a few days turned into a month, now turned into 7 years, which then he gets deceived, turns into 14 years. Which then he spends another 6 years on top of to get some cattle. So somehow a few days turned into 20 years. Right? What does that tell us, though, about how far a little sin will take you? Did Jacob ever think, did Rebekah ever think, when she overheard that conversation with Isaac and Esau, that Jacob was going to be gone in a foreign country where he does not belong for the next 20 years? Right? Do we ever think the little sins that started off in our youth would be the same sins that bug us today? Right? Because where did those sins start? The sins that we have now, just because we're adults, the only difference between adults and kids is age. Right? Unfortunately, we're not as smart as we think we should be. Right? Unless you're trained, unless you get rid of that, you're going to carry that same sin forward. Right? So where's Evan? Evan and Ian and them with their kids. Right? Clint and your kids. Shirley, you got no kids anymore. Right? The lies that you let them get away with. Valerie, the lies that you let them get away with here, they are going to carry that forward and be liars when they're Chuck's age. Right? Not picking on Chuck, but I mean, Chuck is a more mature person. Chuck. Yeah.
I gotta say, Ashton was my best liar. You wouldn't have thought that.
That's an awesome thing to say, isn't it?
Oh, I mean, stone cold poker face.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I got lots of stories to tell about that. But every single time, the unsuspecting parents were allowed to bust her because God would bring prima facie evidence of things we weren't looking for.
Sure.
He was dealing with her.
Yeah.
Like he deals with Esau. We're talking about Jacob here being pierced through with many sorrows because of perhaps the desire for wealth, right?
Yeah.
So now he's going to spend 20 years and be deceived like he deceived.
Yeah, because he talks about where he gets deceived with Leah, right? Instead of marrying Rachel, he gets Leah, and he's like, wait a minute, what did you do to me? Well, now you know how Esau and Isaac feel back here. Well, son, what'd you do to me? Esau, he got me again. Right? So what? Reaping and sowing? Right? So when we're kids, the things that we're sowing that we think are cute and innocent back here only takes firmer root when we're older. Right? How many of you have gardens? Working on one? How many of you love weeding gardens? Right? When do you got to get those weeds? Right away. Right? As soon as you see them. Otherwise you get those ones with the big tapers and those things never come out. Right? You got to kill it here. Otherwise, when it's a teenager, what do you have? When it's an adult, what do you have? Right? Who does God want to use? Everybody, right? Does God train us throughout our lives to get us to where He wants us to be? Right? So, do you think Satan knows that God wants to use us? Right? You realize that the qualifications for deacons and pastors that are given in Timothy and Titus, that's not just for deacons and pastors. That's for all of us. That's for all of us. And then God can now say, you know what? Now I want to use you as a. Right? Because there's no 4-year-old that goes, you know what? I think God wants me to be a deacon, so maybe I should follow those qualifications. Right? That whole qualification thing is built, is progressed, is grown. Right? Positively then. And now you can have good fruit. Right? Not being choked out by the weeds. Right? That thorny ground. Like what's attempting to be happening to Jacob there, right? Ah, very good. Chuck, sorry.
You know, there's a running, repeating theme of the firstborn not actually getting the birthright.
Yeah, that was mentioned last week
You
too.
can start with Cain,
Yeah.
but Cain chose to disobey or not respond to what God offered.
Mm-hmm.
Then you end up with Ishmael and Isaac,
Yep.
and now you're Jacob and Esau. And later, Manasseh and Ephraim. But in the case of Manasseh and Ephraim, I think they got it right. Because Joseph instructed his father what God said.
Sure. Yeah.
And there was no subterfuge, there was no deceit. He just said, this is what God wants.
Right. Chuck commenting there on the theme there where the birthright not necessarily being passed on to the firstborn, where the firstborn is not actually used the way they think they should be. That even carries through with Reuben, where Jacob tells him, look, hey, you're the firstborn, but you're not going to excel. Right? And with that, we're going to have to conclude our epic adventure through God's Word today. All right.